Welcome back to All About Winning Daily Fantasy Sports. My name is Ty Patton. In this video, I'm going to share my research and strategy for the wide receiver position in Week 4 of the NFL. The results from Week 3 support the idea that the scoring is starting to catch up with the projections. This was not evident in the first 2 weeks of the NFL. Now, when I start to develop a player pool for wide receivers, there's a few things that I do. Number one, I look at the Vegas lines. I'm looking for the games with the higher totals because these are going to be the games needed or to have the players needed to do the scoring. That doesn't mean that I don't consider the other games or players involved in those games, but this is just a starting point for me. I also consider targets. I look at matchups. I consider value. And towards the end of the week, I'm looking for numbers that show ownership so that I may figure out a way to gain leverage against the field, whether I'm playing the large GPP tournaments, head-to-head, double-ups, whatever it is. I still want to have some leverage. Now, taking a quick look back at Week 3, these were some of the findings. The top 5 projected going into Week 3 were Julio Jones, Hopkins from Houston, Keenan Allen, Amari Cooper, and Devontae Adams. The actual top 5 scoring were Evans from Tampa Bay, Keenan Allen from the Chargers, Lockett from Seattle, Shepard from the Giants, and Julio Jones from Atlanta. Allen and Jones were the two that were projected in the top 5 and actually ended up in the top 5. And this reveals, as I mentioned, that the scoring is starting to catch up with projections. In Week 1, out of the top 5 projected wide receivers, none of them ended up even in the top 20. Now, out of those top 5 scoring wide receivers last week, they received a total of 64 targets. That's an average of 12.8 targets for each receiver that was in the top 5. Further breaking this down into points per target from the top 5, it comes out to 2.96 points per target in Week 3 for the top 5 wide receivers. Now, through the first 3 weeks, I want to identify the wide receivers who are gaining or who have the top target percentage. And this is through 3 weeks. And remember, this is just the main slate. This is the players that are going to be in the Sunday games. I don't include these Thursday night, Sunday night, or Monday night games because those games aren't on the main slate. Excuse me. Number 1, Keenan Allen from the Los Angeles Chargers. He's received 42 targets in 3 weeks. He's 14 a game. Number 2, Christian Kirk with 32 targets, 10.67 a game. Number 3, Watkins from Kansas City, 32 targets, 10.67 a game. Number 4, Cooper Kupp from the Rams, 31 targets per game, 10.33 a game, 31 total targets. Number 5, Larry Fitzgerald from Arizona with 31 targets, 10.33 a game. Number 6 is Odell Beckham Jr. with 30 targets, which is 10 a game. Number 7, 30 targets, 10 a game. Lockett from Seattle with 28 targets, 9.33 a game. Hopkins from Houston, 9.33 a game. Evans from Tampa Bay with 28 targets, 9.33 a game. Marquise Brown from Baltimore, 27 targets, which comes out to 9 a game. And Kenny Galladay with 27 targets, which comes out to 9 targets per game. That's the top targeted wide receivers through 3 weeks, the top 12. I further broke these 3-week target totals into fantasy points scored to receive the following: 1.95 points per target. That's what, if you took all of those the top 12 targeted wide receivers and broke it down into fantasy targets per target, it comes out to 1.95 points per target. Now, this factors in yardage, touchdowns, fumbles, making the total points relevant. And I do want to mention that touchdowns have so much variance from week to week. And you can't, years ago when I played fantasy football and I'd build a lineup, I would want to I'm looking for the players that I thought would score touchdowns, and I don't even consider touchdowns in factoring my player pool. I do look at like red zone targets and red zone rushes to try to gain an edge, but I don't look for that to be the basis of my scoring. And if I get it, then it's a bonus. This shows the importance of identifying the top targeted wide receivers and not just the top scoring wide receivers. As I mentioned, touchdowns are really have a lot of variance. Now let's look at the matchups going into week 4 and see what they tell us. The worst team right now against the wide receiver is the Giants. They are allowing 56.4 points a game. This weekend, they'll be playing the Washington Redskins. Number 31 is the Washington Redskins. They're giving up 55.7 points per game, and they'll be playing the Giants. So those two are playing each other. It has a lower total. Let me see here real quick. 46.5 total points. So there could be significant amount of scoring there, and it could also have a lot of value in the wide receivers that are involved in that game, and we'll get to that. Houston is giving up 48.2 points per game. They're going to be playing Carolina. Oakland's giving up 45.3 points per game. They're playing Indianapolis and T.Y. Hilton. Hopefully he's going to be healthy. Right now he has a questionable tag. Baltimore, this was a little bit surprising, but they have played Kansas City, which inflates everybody's numbers. But they're giving up 43.9 points per game to the wide receiver. This weekend, they're going to play Cleveland and Odell Beckham Jr. and Jarvis Landry. Detroit, they're giving up 41.9 points per game. This weekend, they have Kansas City at home. Next is Minnesota. They're giving up 41 points per game. They're going to be playing the Chicago Bears and Allen Robinson. And number 21, who I thought would probably be the worst, but they're still not great, is the Miami Dolphins. They're giving up 38.8 points per game, and this weekend they get Keenan Allen and the Los Angeles Chargers. So the wide receivers from the group with the best matchups are McLaurin from Washington, Shepard from the Giants, Moore from Carolina, Hilton from Indianapolis, Beckham from Cleveland, Watkins from Kansas City, Robinson from Chicago, and Keenan Allen from the Chargers. There are some surprising names, but there's also a lot of potential value in that group. Now, some of the top targeted wide receivers inside the red zone, it reveals the following. Emmanuel Sanders is number 1. He's received 8 targets inside the 20, and 5 of those were inside the 10. Flacco's looking for him when they get down close to scoring. T.Y. Hilton, he's received 7 targets inside the 20, and 5 of those were inside the 10. McLaurin from Washington has received 6 targets inside the 20, with 4 of those inside the 10. Keenan Allen, he's received 6 inside the 20, with 3 inside the 10. Excuse me. Fitzgerald from Arizona, he's received 6 targets inside the 20, and all 6 of those were inside the 10-yard line. So Murray is looking for Fitzgerald when he gets down there. And lastly in this list, Preston Williams from the Miami Dolphins. He's been targeted 5 times inside the 20 and once inside the 10. Richardson from Washington, Landry from Cleveland, Sutton from Denver, Williams from Oakland, and Jones from Atlanta, Evans from Tampa Bay have all received 4 targets inside the 20-yard line. And Landry, Williams, and Jones have all received 3 of those inside the 10. Looking at projections and factoring in the Draftkings salary, I identified the following wide receivers that provide value. Quinn from Washington with a great matchup. He's $3,000. And if you look, depending on what site you look at, and site I look at, the projections compared to his salary make him a very viable wide receiver with a lot of value. McLaurin from Washington, he's $4,500. Again, has the top matchup on the board. Giants are giving up the most points per game to the wide receiver position. Next, Keenan Allen. He's the third highest. If you're going to spend up, he is. But his ceiling, as far as what he can offer, last week he scored 46 points, and that was definitely way above value for his salary. He's 70, like I said, he's $7,600, and if he reaches his projection, he provides a lot of value. Kenny Galladay from Detroit, he has a good matchup as well. He's $5,900. Probably going to be some recency bias with Kenny this weekend. He let down last week in a really good matchup. This week he gets Kansas City at home in what could be a game that's going to provide a lot of scoring. He's $5,900, and with his projection, he could provide pretty good value. Samuel from Carolina is $4,600, and Fuller from Houston is $4,500. They may not be the top projected wide receivers, but factoring in their salary gives you $1 per point, and finding the higher projected point per dollar is key when you're looking for value. Okay, so hopefully all these numbers you've been able to memorize and write them all down, and now we can move on to summarizing, but I'm really just kidding about that. I know I put a lot out there and without actually seeing it on screen, and even if you could see all of it in screen, it'd be hard to really follow and how I correlate it. But now I'm going to summarize this and give you the player pool that I've developed for the wide receiver position this week. Keenan Allen. His salary is $7,600. He's receiving 14 targets per game. He's facing Miami, who's given up 38 points per game to the wide receiver position. He has a really high floor, as I mentioned. The only thing that concerns me is game script. Do they get up high enough and they quit throwing the ball, or does Austin Eckler be the way? Do they turn to him if the game gets out of reach? And that's going to be a big question week in and week out with Miami. But Keenan Allen is definitely one of Phillip Rivers' favorite target. Next is McLaren from Washington, $4,500. The Giants are allowing 56.4 points per game to the wide receiver, and he's received 6 red zone targets so far this year. And I had injury wrote by his name, but I want to look down here real quick. He's $4,500. He's got a questionable tag, so we'll be watching that. And remember, we'll be looking at this again on Saturday when we take the player pools from each position and we build some actual lineups. Coach Jay Gruden said McLaren was a limited participant during Thursday's practice due to a hamstring injury. Craig Hoffman of 106.7, The Fan, Washington reports, "I sure hope not," Gruden said when asked if the rookie is in danger of missing Sunday's game against the Giants. Yeah, he's one of my favorites this week because of price and matchup, and there's a lot there. I don't like to use receivers who have injuries like that, but we'll see. Sometimes there's a little bit of gaming going on with the injury report. Of course, New England's one of the best at it, but we'll definitely be keeping an eye on that moving forward. Kenny Galladay, I liked him a lot last week. Thought the matchup was really good against Philadelphia, and he let me down. I had him in a lot of my lineups, but I don't mind going right back to him this week in a game that could prove to be really high scoring. He receives 9 targets a game, and maybe the recency bias will cause his ownership to go down, and I can gain some leverage by utilizing him. And I believe at his price, $5,900, he could have. He could be extremely valuable as far as what he's capable of providing. Christian Kirk is $5,100. He's receiving 10.67 targets a game. The game script favors him. Um, the Arizona is running a lot of plays per game with their fast offense, and Murray has thrown more passes than any quarterback in the NFL right now. So he's definitely a target. And the one thing you have to consider is that Larry Fitzgerald, who's 5,600, and actually my next wide receiver, he's receiving 10.33 targets a game. And there's a scenario where you could actually use both of them, and with their salary, they throw the ball around a lot, and they get those targets between them. It's not out of the question to use both of them in a lineup. And Fitzgerald has received 6 targets inside the 10-yard line. So Murray's looking for him. He knows to go to the old man when you get down there. Sammy Watkins from Kansas City is $6,700. He's receiving 10.67 targets per game. Detroit's allowing 41.9 points per game. They're indoors, fast track, and Mahomes. I don't think I really have to say too much more about that. It's just a matter of who he throws the ball to, not if he's going to throw the ball. He's going to throw the ball. Shepard from the Giants. Redskins are allowing 55.7 points per game. And to the wide receiver, it's a really good matchup. Barkley's out. And new quarterback Jones. Looked to him last week. Shepard had a really good game. He was in the top 5 overall scoring. And you can see a situation with Jones going back to him. T.Y. Hilton. Oakland's averaging 45.3 points per game. Hilton's received 7 red zone targets. 5 of them were inside the 10. The only question is he's got a big questionable tag near his name. So another receiver to keep an eye on. T.Y.'s last few years has really had some injury problems. Says today Hilton isn't practicing quadriceps. And because he's older, he could possibly be receiving a maintenance day. It says Hilton's week 4 status is still up in the air, but the White House outlook on that front would obviously improve if he's able to practice in any capacity Friday. If Hilton is limited or out Sunday against the Raiders, added snaps or targets would be up for grabs between Zach Pascal, Paris Campbell, and Deion Kane. So he's another one we'll be keeping an eye on. Quinn from Washington, I mentioned him in the value, $3,000. The matchup with the Giants is a really good matchup. If McLaren's banged up or can't play, you could see a situation where Quinn would be targeted even more. And the matchup is really good for him. Cooper Kupp from the Rams. He's receiving 10.33 targets per game. His salary is $6,500, so he's one of the ones. If you get up to $6,500, do you want to go up? If you're there, do you want to go up to Beckham for $800 more? But that is a pretty big jump. I mean, 65. I was going to say Keenan Allen. That's an $1,100 jump. Cooper Kupp provides a lot of value out of his price. It's kind of like right there in the middle. He's $100 more than T.Y. Hilton, but he is receiving a ton of targets, and golf is going to him. So he's definitely one that needs to be in the player pool. Hopkins from Houston's receiving 9.33 targets per game, and history shows that Hopkins can totally blow a slate. Scoring wise, I mean, Watson looks to him, and if he gets on a roll, he can blow a slate wide open. He is $7,700, the second most expensive wide receiver on the slate. A really good matchup with Carolina in a game that should have some scoring. So you always have to consider DeAndre Hopkins. And he could be lower ownership and a nice pivot off of players like Keenan Allen and Julio Jones. I think Keenan Allen is going to be one of the highest owned wide receivers this week. So Hopkins could be a nice pivot off of that. And lastly, Odell Beckham Jr. He's receiving 10 targets a game. He's playing against Baltimore, who's given up 43.9 points per game to the wide receiver position. He'll probably have lower ownership because of the matchup, and he's another one that could be a pivot off of the higher Keenan Allen or Hopkins. Now, this gives me 12 wide receivers to add to the player pool. Obviously, I reserve the right to add or subtract from this, and if I do that on Saturday, I'll cover that. I'll tell you why I did it, why I added, or why I've subtracted, and cover the injury report, and if there's any weather concerns or anything like that. But I just, I still look at things as I go through the week and I build my lineups, and I don't just stop with tonight and here's the 12 that I'm going to use no matter what. I still look at them and see if I can find more value. I look at ownership and factor all those things as well. And like I said, we'll cover that on Saturday. Value and ownership are key numbers in narrowing down to build a lineup. High targets give us a high potential and a high potential for a high floor. So there you go. I want to thank you for joining me. I'm going to be putting together my tight end defensive special teams video and posting that tomorrow. This isn't quid quo pro, but I'd really appreciate it if you would subscribe, like, hit the notification bell so you get notified when my next video drops. If you want to add some comments below, I'd gladly welcome them. Something that you like, something you'd like me to change, or if you got any questions or any ideas, feel free and I'll answer all questions. So that's all I have for you right now, and I'll see you shortly with tight ends, defense, special teams. Have a good evening. This is all about winning daily fantasy sports. My name is Ty Patton. Good night.